On behalf of Link Engineering Company, I would like to thank you for your interest in LabLINK. In this video, we are going to cover a few topics for a new LabLINK configuration. Those topics include setting up laboratories, users, roles, and assigning privileges to those roles, creating machine types, as well as creating machines and locations that can be used for scheduling. As we begin our new configuration, we are going to navigate to the Setup module. Inside of the Setup module, we have a number of different items that can be set up here. As we mentioned before, labs, machine types, machines, users, and roles. To begin, we are going to set up a new laboratory inside of this LabLINK installation. As we'll notice as I navigate to the laboratory configuration here, we have about 6 that have been created inside of this LabLINK installation. To create a new laboratory, and at least one laboratory is required for each LabLINK installation, we will click on the Create button on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, it is important to note while we are creating this laboratory that only a system administrator is capable of creating a new laboratory. A user role who has the privilege Manage Lab is able to edit existing laboratories, but they are not able to create a new laboratory. So at this point, to create the laboratory is just as easy as providing information in all of the required fields here. And again, a system administrator would be responsible for this activity. So I'll fast forward through typing in this information. Okay, now that we've entered all of the form fields that are required, plus a couple of extras here, we'll go ahead and click Save. And after doing this now, you'll notice that we have this new laboratory that has been created. Now, generally speaking, laboratories are generally set up for specific geographic locations, but this doesn't necessarily have to be the case. User roles and machines are assigned to laboratories. So there may be instances in your specific application where you may want to have more than one laboratory, even inside of a single building, if you have different people managing that laboratory, for example. One instance of this would be in our installation of LabLINK for our testing laboratory. You'll notice for the most part, we do have a laboratory created for each geographic location for each country here. With the exception, we do have a couple of laboratories in Michigan. So we have our Michigan laboratory, which is primarily laboratory equipment, and we also have our North American vehicle testing lab, which is specific to our Michigan, Arizona, and our Ohio groups for vehicle testing using portable data acquisition systems. So moving on, I'd like to talk about users, roles, and privileges. Now, it's important to note that inside of our setup module for users, a system administrator has access to this panel, but you will notice that there is no ability to create users. There is no plus button here to create a new user. Users are responsible for registering, and once they have registered, a system administrator or a person who has Managed Lab as one of their roles is able to unlock them and to define a user role for that individual user. To demonstrate this, I will log out of my current account. So from this point, once we have landed on the login page, we will want the new user to click the Register Here button. Now at this point, they're going to need to fill in this information. They also need to select a password and confirm it. Okay, they will now need to click the Create LabLINK User button. Okay, so now that that has happened, this person has registered an account, but it is locked. And it is up to a system administrator or a person who has a role with a privilege containing Managed Lab to unlock them and to assign them a user role. Now that I've logged back in using my system administrator account and I've navigated to users, you'll notice that I have a couple of users that are highlighted in yellow. And the new user account that we just registered together here, you'll notice if I click on this, it shows over on the right hand side of the screen that this login is locked. Now we have a couple of options here. We can either make this user a system administrator, or we need to assign them to a role. Now we haven't created any roles together yet, so that's going to be the next step in our process. We're going to define a couple of user roles, and then we'll be able to assign this user to that role and unlock their account. To do this, inside of our setup module, we want to go to roles. And you'll notice as I click here, we actually have a large number of roles that have already been defined for this specific demonstration installation that we're working inside of. But we will create a new one together. To create a new role, we want to go over to the right side of the screen and click the Create button. Okay, now what's going to happen is you're going to notice that we have a large number of privileges that are available to be assigned to this role that we are creating. And each one of these privileges provides different access and gives the administrator a way to both grant and restrict access to specific parts of LabLINK and what that user should be doing in their day-to-day operations. Okay, so we are going to create a new name. So we're going to call this, how about Demo Lab Manager. Okay, now we want to assign some of these privileges. Now the privileges that you see, these are all created and are here by default inside of your LabLINK installation. As you're setting up your specific installation, you'll want to create these roles as they make sense for your unique business. We want this person to be able to unlock user accounts. And as we mentioned previously, Managed Lab is one of those privileges that is required to do that. So I'm going to simply drag this over and drop it. So now this Demo Lab Manager role has been granted Managed Lab privileges. What we're going to do right now is create this very basic one, Demo Lab Manager. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. Now you'll see that we have this new user role. And now that we have this role, we should be able to unlock the demo.user account that was just created. So we're going to navigate back to users. We'll notice that we still have this in yellow, indicating that this account is locked. Now what we want to do from here is go over to the right side of the screen, and in the drop-down menu we can look at user roles. We'll notice that there are no assigned roles, so I want to click on Assign User. And at this point we need to assign this user to a laboratory and to a role. So this is important in that as you are creating your LabLINK installation, you want to be mindful of where users are going to be placed, what they might be responsible for. As you'll notice here, we have to assign a user to an individual laboratory. Now we can assign them to multiple laboratories, but if we have 10 laboratories residing within inside of the same building, for example, setting up your users would be a little more complicated if you have users that are going to be operating in all of those laboratories. So let's, from the drop-down menu, select the new demo laboratory that we created, and we're going to select the Demo Lab Manager role that we just created. So we're going to notice here, as I assign Demo Lab Manager role, that we've got a bunch of different privileges that came along. Now, if you remember correctly, we only added the Manage Lab privilege, but the rest of the privileges here are all part of the Manage Lab privilege. So now that we've added this role to this demo user, we're going to go ahead and click Assign. So in the upper right hand corner here under Options, we can go ahead and select Unlock. Okay, so now if I were to navigate away from this user and back, you'll now see that they are no longer locked, and you'll see that they have this new demo laboratory role assigned to them. Now, it is possible we could assign additional roles. So it is possible for one person to be assigned to multiple laboratories and then even multiple roles inside of those laboratories. The next step that we want to take in our new LabLINK installation is to set up our machine types. Machine types are used to describe a collection of one or more similar machines. These are created and edited by the system administrator completely independent of a laboratory. Individual machines are assigned to a specific laboratory, but a machine type is not. To access this, we're going to go into the Setup module again, and we're going to go to Machine Types. As I navigate here, we have some that have already been predefined in this demonstration, but we're going to create a couple more. I'm going to click on the Create button in the upper right-hand corner. And to create a machine type is very simple. You simply need to provide a name and then a short description name. In this instance, I'll provide a name of four-wheel chassis dyno with a short name of chassis dyno, and I'll click Save. Once I've done that, we have now created a new machine type that we can create machines underneath. Now, over on the right side of the screen, we're currently looking at the information for this. You'll notice there are many other things that we can do with the machine type. We can provide capabilities. So, for example, a maximum RPM that the drums on this chassis dyno could spin, whether this chassis dyno has NVH capabilities. Any list of items could be picked here and will be shown in a later advanced video. But these capabilities can be used such that as a engineer is putting together a test request, they can identify which machines are capable of executing a specific test by looking at these capabilities. We can also set up things like suggested maintenance. We can look at tasks labels, as well as set up test data extension whitelists, which will provide a mechanism for us to be able to send test data and append that directly to a test request for file types that are set up in this whitelist. Just to go through the exercise, let's add a couple more. So we've now created 3 new machine types. And again, this is being done at a global level, independent of laboratories. So we could have a chassis dyno, caliper test stand, and in-vehicle data acquisition system across any laboratory that we create. The individual machines that we create under these machine types, those will be laboratory specific. Now that we have our machine types created, let's go ahead and create a couple of machines specific to our new laboratory under these machine types. We're going to navigate to Setup, Machines, There are some that are already here, and we're going to add in some additional ones. And to do that, we're going to go to the right side of the screen and click Create. At this point, we can choose some of our specific information for our machines. So I'm going to select a four-wheel chassis dyno, and we're going to call this chassis dyno number 1. Okay, you'll notice I've got to pick a machine type as well as a laboratory where this machine resides. We're going to select our new demo laboratory. I want to make sure that my checkbox is selected for is this machine a location used for scheduling. This is an important feature to make sure that this is checked. The machine details that we see below will be specific to each piece of test equipment that we need to connect. On a ProLink piece of equipment that is able to connect to LabLINK natively, we will have a machine number that is associated with that. We will also need to know the computer name. This will be the full computer name that is visible by going to your control panel and then System. For example, on the PC that I'm using currently, the full computer name is gsmith.linkeng.local. And this will be unique for your specific installation. Okay, for now we're going to leave these items blank because I don't have this information readily available, but I'm going to go ahead and click Save. So you'll notice now that we've created a chassis dyno. Does not have a machine number. Machine type is four-wheel chassis dyno, and it's placed in the laboratory of new demo laboratory that we created today. So next, let's select another one. Caliper test stand. Okay, and again, I'm going to click Save. Let's create one more. Okay, so we've now created 3 new machines, all of which can be used for scheduling purposes, and all of which have been assigned to the laboratory new demo laboratory. Now in our scheduling module, which will be covered in a later video, we schedule against locations. Machines are considered locations, as well as we can create non-machine locations for scheduling purposes. For example, a wear measurement room. To show how this works, we're going to jump ahead a little bit and go to our scheduling module briefly. And we're going to look at locations. So as you're going to notice here, we have a number of locations that are already set up, some of which are going to be our newest ones. And I'm going to show a quick little tip here on a way to identify those. In the upper left-hand corner here for options, I'm going to pick column options, and I'm going to add in a create date and click Save. Now we'll see the date that each one of these was created. And you'll see right now we're actually sorted by the most recent. So these are the 3 locations that we just created, or machines in this particular case. You'll also notice that there are some locations in here as well that do not have a machine number. And again, as I had mentioned previously, that could be something like a wear measurement room or a staging area or something like that that we want to be able to put on the schedule and schedule tasks against, but aren't necessarily a machine themselves. One of the other things that's unique about a location that isn't a machine is that we can have concurrent scheduling there. So for example, we could have 7 different test requests all scheduled at the same time inside of the wear measurement room. To show how this works, we're going to create a new one, a new location. Over on the right hand side of the screen, I'll click the Create button. Okay, and the very first question that it's going to ask of us is, what does this location belong to? And does it belong to a laboratory or to a machine? So we're going to select a laboratory. Okay, we're going to pick our new demo laboratory. And let's just call this, since I keep saying wear measurement room, let's use that. Now, something that's important to note here would be our location details. And this, we want to check this to allow tasks to overlap. So meaning that we can have concurrent scheduling on this location. So for something like a wear measurement room, we would want to be able to have multiple different test requests, or the tasks for those rather, scheduled at the same time to this specific location. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create there. Now you'll notice that we have this location does not have a machine number associated with it. This is going to conclude our new LabLINK configuration demonstration video. The next video will talk about test request design. Thank you for your time and have a great day.